I never thought that a simple greeting could lead to an obsession that would haunt me for an entire school year. But looking back, I realized there were warning signs, small details that, when pieced together, painted a terrifying picture. My 8th grade history class was just like any other, until I noticed Theodore, the boy who sat next to me. He wasn't like anyone else in class. He never smiled, never laughed, never joined in on jokes. There was something different about him, like he existed in a world of his own. No one really talked to Theodore, but I wasn't the kind of person to judge someone just because they were different. I figured he was just introverted, someone who had trouble fitting in socially. I didn't see anything wrong with that. But then, things started to change. That day, Theodore came to class with his fingernails painted black. It wasn't the strangest thing I had ever seen, but it caught my attention. I turned to him and asked, "Did you do that for Halloween? Looks cool." For the first time, his face lit up. His eyes sparkled as if no one had ever acknowledged him before. He stammered a little when he answered, but I could tell I had made him happy. From that day on, we started greeting each other every morning. At first, I didn't think much of it when I caught him looking at me, a quick glance when I turned my head, a lingering stare while I talked to my friends. I figured maybe Theodore had a small crush on me, which wasn't unusual for kids our age. But over time, those looks became longer, stranger. One day I received a friend request from Theodore on Facebook. I had no reason to decline, so I accepted. At first, our messages were normal, talking about schoolwork, small things. But then the conversations became deeper. He spoke about how he always felt alone, how no one really understood him. I began to feel sorry for him. He didn't have many friends, and I thought maybe he just needed someone to listen. But I didn't realize that my kindness had opened a door I wouldn't be able to close. I wasn't the type to be glued to my phone all day, so sometimes I didn't reply immediately. And that seemed to make Theodore restless. At first, he would just send messages like, "What are you up to? I saw you were online but didn't reply. Are you okay?" But then the messages became more frequent. If I didn't respond, he would send 3 or 4 in a row, then 10, then dozens. They weren't just check-ins anymore. His words started to take on a desperate, obsessive tone. "I feel like you don't want to talk to me anymore. Maybe I'm annoying you, but I don't want to lose you. If you want me to disappear, just say so." For the first time, I felt uncomfortable, but I still tried to be polite, telling him I was just busy. I didn't realize that the more I reassured him, the deeper he fell into his obsession. One afternoon, I sent Theodore a reply before taking a nap. When I woke up, I had 77 new messages. He had written out an entire conversation by himself, asking questions, answering them, sometimes even arguing with himself. I didn't know what to do. I sent just one message back. "Are you okay?" His reply came instantly. "I'm great." Made my skin crawl. I tried to distance myself, but that only made him cling harder. During a school field trip, he followed me and my friends, silently watching. Then one day, he gave me a box. I didn't want to accept it, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings either. I thanked him. When my friend opened it for me, inside was a ring engraved with my middle name. I had never told him my middle name. I blocked him on Facebook. I stopped answering his messages. But one night, as I was about to fall asleep, I heard something outside my bedroom window. Leaves rustling. A presence. I didn't dare pull back the curtains, but I knew someone was there. My heart pounded. I ran to my parents, telling them I heard noises outside. My dad went to check. There was no one there, but I knew he had been watching me. After that, I lied and told him my parents had taken my phone away, that I couldn't talk anymore. Eventually, Theodore faded from my life. But even now, on some nights, just as I'm about to sleep, I feel that stare again. I don't know where he is, but I know he's still watching, and I can only hope that somehow he has found something else to obsess over. Because with people like Theodore, the obsession never truly ends. When people think of school sports coaches, they usually picture strong, middle-aged men full of energy and enthusiasm. But the coach of my school's girls' basketball team was unlike anyone else. He was an old man, 79 years old, with silver hair and a soft-spoken voice. At first, everyone was surprised. An elderly man coaching a high school basketball team? But he had a gentle smile and a slow, reassuring way of speaking that made people trust him. He often said he wanted to bring back the glory days, and we all assumed he was just a nostalgic old man with a passion for sports. But I had no idea that behind his kind exterior lay something far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. Before the season began, I had to undergo a tonsillectomy. That meant I would have to rest and miss the first practice of the season. I didn't think much of it until the day before my surgery, when the coach unexpectedly showed up with a small cupcake, a sweet treat for a sweet girl. His words made me uncomfortable, but I thanked him anyway. No coach had ever given me a gift just because I was missing practice. I assumed he was just being nice. But looking back, I realize now that was the first red flag, and I ignored it. When I returned to school after my recovery, I ran into the coach at the gym. He beamed at me and handed me an envelope. "The team missed you. I came to visit you at the hospital, but you had already been discharged." I was stunned. I had never told him which hospital I was staying at. But I didn't question it. I just thought he was a dedicated coach. When I opened the envelope, I found a handwritten letter, a long one. He wrote about how much he had been looking forward to my return, how the team wasn't the same without me. His words made me uneasy, but I still thought he was just an old man trying to be kind. I was wrong. When the basketball season ended, I joined a volleyball club outside of school. Our matches were on weekends, and the coach had no reason to be there. But he showed up anyway. At first, he stood from a distance, just watching. Then he started coming closer, wishing me luck before matches. After games, he would hug me, longer than necessary. Things started to feel wrong. Then the pandemic hit. Schools shut down. I thought I would never see the coach again, but he started texting me. At first, it was about fitness training. Then he wanted to come to my house. "If you'd like, I can come over to help you practice." I told him I could only train when my parents were home, thinking it would discourage him. It didn't. He started showing up at my house without warning. At first, once a week, then twice, then 3, then 4 times a week. Each time he would stay for hours, just talking, refusing to leave. I was terrified, but I didn't know what to do. When I started responding to his messages less often, he became alarmingly sensitive. "Do you not love me anymore? Am I no longer your favorite coach?" Each message made me feel suffocated. He made me feel guilty, like I was doing something wrong by trying to distance myself. 2 days before my 17th birthday, he came to practice with a gift, a small box. Inside was a necklace and a letter, a 3-page letter. He insisted that I read it in front of him. I didn't dare refuse, so I skimmed through it. In the letter, he confessed his feelings for me. He wrote about how I was special, more special than anyone else. At the bottom of the letter, he had drawn a heart, and inside the heart was a tiny key, with the words, "You hold the key to my heart." I was horrified. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I told my parents everything. At first, they didn't believe me. They had always thought he was a good man, a dedicated mentor. But when I showed them the texts, the letters, the undeniable proof, they called the school administration. He was fired immediately. But the scariest part? After he was gone, other girls came forward. He had done the same things to them, but they had been too afraid to speak. Even now, after I've graduated, I sometimes shudder when I think about it. He manipulated me, controlled me, made me believe everything was normal. But it wasn't normal. It was a nightmare disguised behind the gentle smile of a kind old man. And if I hadn't spoken up that day, I might still be trapped in it. I was never good at making friends. As an introverted student, I usually kept to myself in class or only spoke to a few close friends. But then he appeared. He wasn't particularly noticeable. Not handsome, not outgoing, not someone with a large circle of friends. But somehow, he was always there, as if trying to become a part of my life. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was naturally friendly, and if someone wanted to be friends, I had no reason to say no. But over time, I realized he wasn't like other people. I had a habit of eating lunch in the math classroom because the cafeteria was too loud. He started showing up there too, sitting near me. At first, he didn't say anything. just quietly watching me eat. Then one day he spoke. "You don't like eating in the cafeteria, do you?" I nodded and smiled. He smiled back, but something about that smile felt off. After that, he started talking to me more. We talked about family, school, hobbies. I realized he was quite intelligent, but there was something strange. He seemed to know too much about me. "You like iced green tea, right?" I froze. I had never told him that. "You usually go home in your mom's car, but some days you take the bus, don't you?" I didn't know how to respond. How did he know? Slowly, I started feeling uneasy. One day, he walked into class with an ice cream bar and placed it in front of me. "I got this for you. I never see you eat much." I thanked him and took it, but as soon as I did, a chill ran down my spine. I had never told him about my eating habits. Then, out of nowhere, he stopped talking to me. But instead, he started watching. No matter where I went, I could feel his stare. When I laughed with my friends, when I walked down the hallway, when I focused on my assignments, he was always there, silently watching. One of my close friends noticed and began shielding me, glaring back whenever he stared too long. He saw this, and his expression changed. His eyes weren't just watching anymore. They were full of anger, jealousy. One day, as I sat in class waiting for the next lesson, I witnessed something that made my blood run cold. He was going through people's bags. I froze. I didn't want to confront him. I hated confrontation. But I remembered which bags he had searched. When he saw me watching, he stiffened. Then, just as quickly, he composed himself. "Oh, I was just getting my earphones back from a friend." I said nothing, just nodded. But deep down, a terrible feeling gnawed at me. The next day, I was called to the principal's office. "We need to know what you saw yesterday." I knew exactly what they were asking about. I told them everything. Later that afternoon, I found out he had stolen $200 from another student, and when they caught him, he showed no remorse. He was forced to return the money and was given a suspension. And after that, he never spoke to me again. But I didn't feel relief. I felt something far worse. I thought it was over. I was wrong. He may not have been talking to me, but he was collecting information. He started befriending people I used to be close with, even those who had once bullied me. He knew which car I rode in, what foods I liked, what cafes I visited. He had my phone number, though I had never given it to him. He even knew about the trading card games I played, something only my closest friends were aware of, and I had no idea how. After graduation, I never saw him again. But sometimes when I'm walking down the street, sitting in my favorite cafe or waiting at a red light, I feel it, that stare. I don't know where he went or what he's doing now, but I do know one thing. If one day I open my door and find him standing there, I won't be surprised. I just pray that day never comes.